Okay, we are at the 12th Armored Memorial Museum in Abilene, Texas. It is October 5th, 2001, and we are here during the 55th annual reunion. We are here with Charlie Peischl.
Peischl, yes.
Peischl. And my name is Michelle Colvin.
Michelle, hi.
So let's go ahead and get started. Charles, where are you, what unit are you from?
56th Armored Infantry Battalion, 12th Armored Division.
So were you born and raised?
Born in Pennsylvania, in the Lehigh Valley area, close to a village called Nazareth, Pennsylvania. And that's in the cement area of Pennsylvania.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about your parents and your background before the service?
Okay, both of my parents were born in Europe. My mother was born in Hungary, came to the United States at the age of about 12 with her mother. My father was born in Austria and came to the United States at the age of 15 by himself, and I could never understand how he had enough courage to do that, not speaking the language and making his own way, but he did.
So did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, we were born and raised in Pennsylvania, close to a little village called Nazareth, Pennsylvania. It's in the cement area. I was one of 7 kids, number 6, and had a very strong mother who ran the family, you know. But that's about all.
So how did you enter into the Army? Were you drafted? Or?
I was drafted. Yes, I was drafted. In fact, I went for a physical, and I'll never forget this because it was so new, the way you performed at this physical. You know, it was a different age than now. And I was rejected the first time they gave me a physical because I used to wear a brace on my one knee, on this one here, and they said I'd never have to go into the service. Well, about 3 or 4 months later on, they examined me again, and they said they would put me in some kind of a unit where I didn't have to walk so much or anything like that. And of course I ended up in the infantry, which seemed kind of strange. But one day I decided the brace had to go, and I threw it away. And from then on I just kept going in the service. Ended up in the 12th Armored Division, and one of the low parts of that was when I found out they put me in the infantry, and I sure as hell did not want to serve in the infantry, but that's where I ended up. And I was very proud when I left there to be serving in the infantry because of the kind of people that I encountered all through my Army career. Brave young men, strong young men, and good people.
Neat. So do you remember where you were at when Pearl Harbor was bombed?
I lived in Nazareth, Pennsylvania at the time. I was not in a service at that time. And I think it was it on a Sunday? I think so. Yes, it was, yeah. And as far as I was concerned, where was Pearl Harbor? I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was. And of course, that was a changing time of our life, the way I look at it. And shortly after that, I was drafted. I didn't go voluntarily. I was drafted into the service, and like I said, I was rejected the first time. And about 4 months later on, something like that, I forget the time period, and about 4 months later on, I was again given a physical, and they put me in. And I'll never forget, the doctor said to me, well, we'll put you into something that you don't have to walk so much. And I ended up in the infantry, and I thought, well, there it is. And I was very fortunate that I ended up in the 56th Armored Infantry, and at that time it was called a regiment. and it was in the 12th Armored Division, Camp Campbell, Kentucky. And it was just a brand new camp, mud. Every place you looked, it was just mud, mud, and more mud. And we formed our company and battalions there, and in fact, that time it was a 56th Armored Infantry Regiment. It was not a battalion, it was a regiment. And I was in H Company. Yes, see, a regiment is made up of more than just 3 companies. And it was changed from a regiment to 3 different battalions after we came off of maneuvers in Tennessee and ended up in Camp Barkley in Texas. And we trained there. And when we got to Camp Barkley, we met many new soldiers, and one of them is sitting right aside of me at this time, and they were young students who had been probably 1 year of college, ASTP, and I think the government found out they needed young people, and so that was, the whole program was almost disbanded. And these young people had probably 1 year of college, or maybe a little more, and they were put into our infantry battalion, and I must say they were very unhappy to be in our infantry battalion. Am I right, Ron?
Well, I guess being in the service, we had to accept what came.
Yeah, okay, this is my friend Ron who ended up there with us. And we trained together and went overseas together and so forth.
So what did you think of the ASTP program? Did you have an opportunity to be involved in it, or?
No, I was not involved in it. They were much, if I may say it this way, very few of the men before the ASTP program joined us had gone further than a high school graduation and so forth. It was only after the ASTP, and it kind of put, if I may say this, it kind of put all the others a little on guard, because we knew their education was further advanced than the ones who were there and so forth. And it turned out better than we ever thought it would turn out.
Good. So once you were at Camp Barkley, where did you go next?
Camp Barkley? Well, we left for overseas. We had about I can't tell you the exact date, but we did a lot of training back there in the hills of Texas and so forth and so on. From there we went to New York, port of embarkation. Got on the ship Empress of Australia. Am I right, Ron?
Yes.
Empress of Australia, and it was just, oh my gosh, and I found out that it had just brought from Europe German prisoners of war, and the strange thing about it was they were brought over about 2,500 prisoners of war, and that was maximum they were permitted to put on a ship, except when we got on the ship, there were about 5,000 of us going to Europe. And of course, the law, the war, or whatever laws it was there, that ship, they were not permitted to put more than 2,500 prisoners on to bring to New York. But when we got on it, they were able to really load it up. And we landed at Liverpool, England, took a train to Tidsworth. Am I right, Ron?
Right.
We went to Tidsworth, and of course, that was a strange experience for us to live in England, you know. And from there, we did more training, and I'm trying to think of the ship that took us to France, landed us over there. I don't know anymore. And from there we went inland in France a little ways and prepared for combat.
Do you remember who your captain was?
Yes, Captain Beach.
Did you
And
like
yet-
him? Or?
Yes, Captain Beach was very fine, and he's a very fine man. He is now. He was a professional soldier. He stayed in, and I think Captain Beach ended up coming out as a brigadier general. He is now in an army hospital, and so forth. He not through injuries, but kind of not in too good of health. All right.
So who else were some of your buddies while you were overseas?
Oh boy, we had a lot of friends overseas. One of the finest young men that became he was our platoon sergeant, Delbert Darnell, and of course he was killed overseas, and there was others like that. And right now we're having our convention, and it's strange to see that so many years have taken place and that we recognize once in a while. In fact, a year or so ago, when I was at a convention, it was the strangest thing. I was walking down the hall and just making a turn, and there's a man coming in the other direction, and we hadn't seen each other for 50 years, you could say. And just that quick, we called each other by our first names. Yes, and it was so remarkable just to recognize someone after so many years. And we have a fine group of people at our convention. We have nice times. We have some sad times when we recall. And our women are there with us. They kind of keep us in tow.
So tell me about your first experience in battle.
You know, the first experience in battle, I got to tell you, I'll never forget. We used to kid. This was, I guess it was a kind of a nervous gesture that we would wonder who was the first ones to be killed. I don't know if you ever heard anyone tell you that or not, but it was kind of a gesture to say, wonder who's going to be the first ones. And not only that, we were issued what we called mattress sacks. These were the body bags, you know, and we would kid about who's going to be occupying that one and so forth and so on. And it didn't take long when we landed that things took place. My first experience, it wasn't American soldiers, but I'll never forget, was I thought it was sad and frightening and so forth, that I saw a German soldier who had been almost blown in two pieces, hanging on a barbed wire fence. And it made you wonder what his mother and family thought. The strangest thing, I think, we used to kid about this. Wonder who's going to be the first one or something like that. And the strangest thing, I can tell you the names of them because I was that close to them. A young man by the name of, his last name was Maddox, and he was probably one of the finest young men in our platoon, and I could never get over the irony of it, right aside of him. And in fact, when you're in the service, you find real good people and some people who aren't anything but. And right aside, I won't repeat his name, and the same shell killed both of them. That one was probably the finest young man, and probably the other one was whatever. Okay, I won't go into names. And we went on from then. Okay? I have my own ideas about war. I think much, much, much of all of that could have been avoided. We used to be, even I'll never forget going to the movies when all of this was taking place, and it showed pictures of the SS troops gathering up Jewish people, if I may go in that direction, say that. And we used to laugh at it and say, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And we never gave it, we were very so-called, we were either innocent or dumb, whatever you want to call it, okay? To leave something like that go on. Have anything else you want to question?
Did you have any involvement with any of the concentration camps?
Yes. In fact, on one of my trips after the war ended and so forth and so on, many years after, I was in Nicaragua, and I was on a little trip, and they had what we would call a VW bus, you know, the small buses, and they had a driver plus 6 people, and there were 2 couples there, and I was alone, and there was a woman alone, and we traveled all day into different places with a VW, and when we got back to the city, because she was alone and I was alone, I asked her if I could take her out for dinner, and I had an experience with that almost shook me, because we started talking about many things, and we started talking about World War II and different things, and she was Jewish, and all of a sudden she said, "Let me show you something," and she lifted her arm, and there was her tattooed number. And okay, we can go on. You can ask some questions.
Okay. What was your best experience over the war? Did you oversee?
To survive. That was the best experience, okay? To get, I had, for instance, when I sailed overseas, I think I was on the boat for 5 days, and I wasn't aware of this, but I had a son born. And he was almost 2 years old before I ever saw him. So that was my good experience, one of the best experiences, yes.
Neat. Did you ever have any involvement with any of the French civilians?
Oh, I don't know if I did or not, you know. I didn't have any bad experience, or I would have remembered it. I think the French suffered in more ways than we Americans give them credit. I think we were almost sometimes anti-French, and I think that they were not prepared for war, and of course they surrendered quite easily, but they just weren't prepared for it.
What was your experience in Heroldsheim?
Well, let me say this. I saw a lot of young people getting killed. I was very fortunate. In Heroldsheim, I had a bullet hit my steel helmet here, and it came out up here. I had a rifle shot right out of my hands, and so forth. So I don't know who placed a golden charm on my shoulder or not, but I got through it, okay? We lost some good young people. And sometimes I think about it and I get kind of cross, because I don't think we were prepared for it. I don't think I don't think that we had the right information. I think sometimes I think sometimes one or two of the higher officers thought they could make a good name for themselves, and we were not prepared for what we went into. We were really not prepared. So, and you know, Herlesheim is a big word amongst all of us, and I think it was just a terrible experience. If you'd have seen the terrain we went across, was as flat as a pool table, and exposed each and every one of us to any kind of enemy fire and so forth. And it doesn't make me very happy to even think about it, because we lost some tremendously good young people.
Do you remember where you were at when they announced that the war was over?
Where was I at? Well, yes, in Göppingen, Germany, all the way in the southern part of in the Bavarian hillsides there and stuff like that. But you could almost, I'll use a term, you could almost smell that things were easing up. And we used to even joke about things, you know, and we could tell that we even joked about, well, I wonder who's going to be the last one or something like that. You know, even in, was it a nervous way of doing something? We don't know. I don't know.
So did you have to serve with the Army of Occupation?
Yes. And because I had been commissioned as a second lieutenant in combat, my points, was it points or something like that, were raised. If I had stayed an enlisted man, I could have gone home. And I stayed over there probably, all right, the war ended when? It ended up over in Europe in the spring of 44, right? 45. All right, and I did not get out of Europe until February of 46. I was taken out of even before the war, all over the world ended, I was taken out of my company, and they were looking for infantry officers to go to the Pacific. And lo and behold, sure as hell, I was one of the lucky ones to be chosen to go to Pacific, you know. And I was in Marburg, Germany, and I'll never forget this. I was in Marburg, Germany. I was standing in the rain with my mess kit waiting to get some food. And all of a sudden, over the loudspeaker, there came an announcement that the Americans dropped an atomic bomb. And I thought, what in the hell's an atomic bomb? We didn't know what an atomic bomb was. And absolutely it was, and then we got more news about it, that it destroyed a whole city and so forth. And 3 days later on, of course, I think it was 3 days later on, something like that, when the other one was dropped, and that changed the whole complexion and armistice and so forth. And I had been all the way up into Marburg, Germany, which was a point of departure to go to the States and go home. And lo and behold, when the war ended, I had to go back into Germany. And I had to stay there until, I think it was March or April of 46, something like that. I have to look it up.
So what were you in charge of?
In fact, what they sent me, they transferred me from an infantry officer into an engineering unit. And then they sent us to a place near, I'm trying to think of it. Not too far from, what was the city that was never touched. I'm trying to think of the city. It was never touched by bombs over there in Germany.
Cologne?
Heidelberg. Heidelberg was never, and that was always such a strange mystery to me, that not a bomb had ever been dropped in Heidelberg, Germany, and I was transferred near Heidelberg, and had German prisoners of war there, and we used to put them out on work details along, I think the Neckar River runs past there or something like that, yeah. And I had to stay there until, I didn't get home until, I guess April of I gotta think about 46, yeah. And waiting in Pennsylvania was a son almost 2 years old who I'd never seen, and so forth.
So when did you marry?
I married before, I married in 1945, I believe, 45.
So you had other children besides the
No,
3-year-old?
we were only able to have one child, and in 1980 I lost my wife, and I have a son who is, how old? Chuck is now, 57, I believe. Yeah, something like that. Sure.
So how did serving in the war change your life, or affect your life?
I don't know. I guess it made me more aware of how politicians can maneuver us into many different problems. Okay, I think World War II, I feel, could have been avoided. I distinctly remember going to theaters and seeing movies, news photos of what was going on, like in Berlin and so forth, and we were aware of the Jewish people being gathered up and so forth and so on, and I feel that we did not take it very serious. We thought it would never affect us. Yes. And there were things going on that I feel we should have probably tried to stop it much earlier than we did.
When you think back to your war experiences, what would you like the present and future generations to learn from your experiences?
I guess, do we realize how precious life is? Okay? And that many things can be settled without killing people.
That's great.
That's the way I feel about it.
That's great.
And I feel all over the world right now, some of the things that we see happening and so forth, I think could be settled or even avoided before it even gets as far as it does. I think, and I'm outspoken about it, I think at times prior to World War II that we, as Americans, were almost as anti-Semitic as some of the Germans and so forth and so on. My parents both came from Europe, and we lived in a neighborhood where there were immigrants. And you know, many of the people who had come over as immigrants, I think were very for the things that were going on, very much in favor of much was going on. I don't think our churches took a strong enough view of it. I think, if I may say so, regardless of what people damn me to hell and back for saying it, I think our religious leaders did not take enough active part when the Jewish people were taken and so forth. Maybe I'm completely wrong.
No, that's great.
But that's my opinion. I feel our churches, we're a religious community, could have taken a much stronger part in it.
Well, the Christian religions, yeah, if they go by what Christ said, I think that too.
Well, maybe I shouldn't say what I say.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to express to us today?
Through it all, okay? I had the experience of being, working with, and so forth, some of the finest and the finest young men. I guess that's about all I have to say that I can say, and I'm still enjoying their company at times.
Good. Glad to hear it. Do you have any questions for him? No. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this.
You're very good at it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.